In this video, we are going to take a Honda Dio ZX variator and clutch, and we're going to put it on a Honda Dio. This is a 1997 Honda Dio, engine code af18. af16 also is the same, and I think there's a few others. If you're working on this, you know the look of this. We're going to take all the original stuff and we're going to compare it to the aftermarket stuff. I'll give you all the measurements and I'll explain to you how to make it work on one of these engines. It'll give you way more acceleration and way more top end speed. Okay, just so nobody gets confused here, I have the Honda Dio engine on a Honda Spree, so don't think that we're working on the wrong engine or whatever. I just did an engine swap, but that is a Honda Dio engine. So in order to put this kit on, you're gonna need the original belt is a skinnier belt. You're gonna need a thicker belt, and it's thicker and longer. I'll give you the measurements. You can use one of two belts. One is a little bit longer. Here is the three different belt sizes. The top one is the original, and we're probably gonna use the middle belt. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it all works, and I'll give you guys all the dimensions, explain everything here. My goal is to do this in a way so I can use the original covers. Any modifications that I will be doing, I will let you know. I can already tell there's going to be some work involved a little bit there with the grinder. Here's the new clutch and rear variator. Here's the old one. So you can see there's a significant size difference, but the clutches are actually the same size. See, here's the old bell. And the new bell. Here they are on top of each other. Here's the inside measurement. As you can see, it's the same. Here's the outside measurement, give or take, obviously. Both the same. This here, also the same. Here is the original clutch installed. So as you can see, that sticks out about that much. Here is the ZX one. Basically, it's flush. Right here, as you can see, it sits right about there. And here's the other one, it's the same. So this here stays the same. So that's good. So there's two major differences between this. One is the size of it. There you have it. And there you have that size. And the other difference, which is also very important, is this travel here. This one travels way further than this one. The spring's in there right now, so it's hard to compress, but it travels a lot less. See, when you run this thicker belt, in this one, when this is opened all the way, that belt will go right to the bottom, see? But in this one, when this is opened all the way, this belt only runs about halfway down, so it doesn't even go all the way down. Think of this setup like a mountain bike. gears on a mountain bike. So that's like easy gear, right? And then as you're going faster, you want it to change. So there's your top end speed. There's your acceleration speed. The bigger this wheel, it's like you're in an easier gear. The higher it rides up here, like so, when you're going fast, that's your top end speed. So with this original one, your acceleration will be less than with that one. Makes sense? And since this kit has a longer belt than the original belt, when this goes all the way to the bottom, which it can now because this opens more, this will actually ride basically like that on the outside of it as high as it can. The original one, which is this one here, so you can tell where it's worn out. At maximum speed, it would only go up to about there. So you're getting a whole nother gear. There's also a big difference between the original one and this Honda Dio ZX one. Even though they're the same size, I'll explain to you the difference between them because there's a huge difference on how they work. Okay, let's get into the front part of this. So, at first glance, these pretty much look the same, right? They are the same size. They are the same thickness, but there is a huge difference between them. The difference is the travel of this part. So in this one here, this travels about that much. And that's it. But this one here has a way bigger travel than this one here. This one only travels a little bit. See, inside of this, see where the rollers go. So these rollers, they roll all the way to there. See the distance? And these are longer. And this one here, these rollers in here, they only roll that much. That's the difference. So in order to install one of these new ones, you need to take your original boss and you have to extend it. Okay, so here you have the distance of your original boss. Here's the thickness of it. That stays the same. It's a 20, and the inside of it is 14. What we need to do with this is we need to take this measurement, 33.28. Well, it needs to be, all the measurements stay the same, but it needs to be 35.7, roughly about there. 35.7 is what it needs to be. So what we need to do is take some of these washers that they sell on these websites for these scooters, and we need to add enough of them, like so, so it equals 35.7. Probably put one more just to be safe. So now when installing the front part of the engine here, you want to put this on first, then you put your washers, then you put your boss on. That's how that would be. So now this travel point has increased by that amount. It actually increased basically by the thickness of the new thicker belt. You want to have enough room for this belt to go all the way down like that when it's fully opened. So here's the original belt, here's the ZX belt, and here's all the compensating washers that we measured out. See, it's exactly, it just makes up for that belt difference. Okay, so these are also the same size. Okay, so here is the ZX setup with all the compensating washers, everything installed the way it's supposed to be. So it does stick out a little bit more, but looking at the starter here, it just might work the way it is. See, it just kind of catches. But so here we have the original one again. So as far as where this sits, as far as in this part and the new one here, this is the old one, but this back plate and this back plate, they sit in the same spot. Here we have the ZX. See what I mean? Sits the same, and that back plate sits the same. The only difference is this moves this way more, it opens more, and in this case this sits out a little bit further than the original one, and this part moves more as well. So when it is all the way open, it can fit that big belt all the way to the bottom, and here this opens all the way more than the original one for the same reason. So that big fat belt, when this is opened all the way like so, that big fat belt can sit all the way at the bottom. And this one, it wouldn't be able to because it wouldn't open enough. So it would only like go halfway down. I hope I explained that good enough for you guys. If somebody's working on one of these old engines, you know, these are like the most soup-upable engines out of any scooter. You can make these things do wheelies like crazy. They're insane engines. They're awesome. Here is the spring that this kit came with. It only says on it, says Honda Dio plus 20%. That's all it says. So I'm guessing 20% stiffer than the original one. I don't know. We're gonna put it on and I'll show you what it came with to get a decent setup. For now, we're not tightening it. This is just temporarily set up for now. I'm gonna run this belt. The other belt would make it a little bit more top speed, but the problem is, see, there's not much room there. When this belt runs on the outside of that, see, I might even have to cut this out. I don't know yet. But the longer the belt, the further it's gonna ride up. And I think since we're already putting in a bigger transmission than originally was in here, they called for this belt for it or the other one. So I'm guessing in this particular setup, this will be the belt to go with. This is how you put the belt on. And then you just hold it like that. Okay, I'm just tightening this, but not like fully. I don't have a socket that size, so unfortunately I gotta use this. Anyways, good enough for now. See what I already noticed. So here it's at the maximum low that it can be because of the compensating washers, but I noticed it's not on the top here, which tells me that this belt would work right now because nothing's gonna hit on here or there. So I could just basically run this as it sits but it also tells me that I could run the longer belt. If I ran the longer belt, it would sit higher back here. So we're gonna start it up, see how it moves, and then we'll try the longer belt. Okay, so I'm just playing around with this to see if this could possibly, maybe if we put an extra compensating washer or something, but as you can see, I put a line with a marker, and it's good. And I'll show you another reason why you wouldn't be able to put any more. Okay, so when you put this thing on, like so, see, notice how these teeth barely stick out. So the problem is, see, that's got teeth on it too. So if you put this on with the measurements that I gave you, it'll actually suck it enough where those teeth it'll catch. This thing will catch. If you put even one more little washer, it won't. See, right now it caught it. That's where you want it. Okay, so I experimented around and I added basically like just 2 of these little tiny ones, these super skinny ones, paper thin, and it is bringing the back up a little bit, but I'll tell you what the problem is. So this is just barely catching now. I'm gonna say maybe 2 more and it wouldn't even catch anymore. But I compared these, and these are identical. There's no difference. The side, everything is the same on these. The only difference is this part's welded on, and that lip here is a little bit smaller, so you would have to compensate for that with these, I guess, to equal it out. And you could run this if you really wanted to bring this out, but I don't think that belt is supposed to sit right at the bottom where it's rubbing against boss there. I don't think it's supposed to sit right on the boss. I actually do think it is exactly where it's supposed to be. I'm just going like by factory, because when I put the factory one on, that's how the factory one was. I've seen guys say, you know, there's got to be a little bit of play in that, but I don't think so. Plus, then I can't use this. I have to use the original one because the kickstart won't work. See, I put a line there right on the back of that. So that's the setup that I'm giving you the measurements for. And when I put the extra washer where I can't get this part on anymore because it's out too much and it won't catch the gears, that's where it was riding. See the difference? It's almost nothing. I'm gonna say that's the setup you want to go with right there. Basically the measurement I gave you. Okay, let's start her up. Okay, so I decided that I'm gonna run this belt. I think if the belt was a little bit bigger, it will just come like too close to these type of spots. Either way, even with this belt, see this here, I have to grind some of that off. It's just too close. Even when it vibrates, I even touched it a few times. I could see it on the writing of the belt. And then also up here in the front, I noticed that the belt was riding really close to these two things. It's okay in there, because by the time this comes forward, it doesn't get in the way, but these two spots here are awfully close. So we're gonna grind those off. I'll show you everything. I'm gonna take this apart. Okay, I'll show you guys what we're gonna cut off here. So at the bottom here, see right where I painted it, is that, as you can see, this belt basically is touching it. So that's one. The other one is up here. See, I already marked it. It's not really touching, but it is a sharp corner. So when this belt bounces around, it can catch on there. We're gonna grind that off. And then around the starter here, pretty much where the black marker is, we're gonna cut these off, because that belt rides really close, and a little bit in there too. We're gonna cut all that out. Otherwise, I think we're good for this part. Anyways, this next part's pretty easy. You just need a grinder. Okay, now I got one of these. Okay, so I cleaned everything. It's the next day now, and I did lots of research last night before I went to bed. So basically, I got the information on how long this actually needs to be. So it needs to be between 35.7 to 36 millimeters. That's what it needs to be. So right here I have it at, so I'm gonna put it on at 36, and let's see what happens. Okay, so with it at 36 millimeters, those teeth stick out barely enough, but they stick out enough. So you could use this. You could use that. So yeah, that does work. If you were gonna shim it anymore, it wouldn't work anymore, but I did find out those measurements, so that does work. So we're actually gonna run it with this. Now, just for fun and to try things out, I'm gonna put on the longer belt, and I'll show you the difference between the two belts, and that way you can decide which one you wanna run. Okay, so we got the longer belt on, and I'll tell you right now already, this belt is actually sitting higher than the other one, obviously, because it's longer. It makes sense, right? So this belt would have better acceleration than the shorter belt, but what I'm guessing is going to happen when it rides up on the top here, when this squishes it and it rides up to its maximum top, then since it's longer, it's not going to go all the way to the bottom there. So this belt will give you better acceleration, but it will take away from your top speed. Let's start it up and see. Isn't a big difference, but as far as clearances go, like that's cutting it pretty close. When that's vibrating, that's basically hitting that. This spot here, I would have to cut that out more. I got good news for everybody. I'm actually gonna do everything in my power to run the longer belt. We're gonna make that belt work. That's our goal. If we can't do it, we can't do it, but I'm gonna do everything to try to make it fit. Anyways, back to this case now. So we know that the belt, the longer belt, hits this spot. So I'm gonna take all this apart. I'm gonna grind a good portion out of here. Okay, so we're gonna shave that off where the marker is. That's all we need to do there, extra for the big belt. And then on this cover here, on top here, we're gonna see where the marker is. We're gonna shave off like this, make this skinnier a little bit and get a little bit of that. Don't want to go all the way through though and make a hole. And then at the bottom, just a little bit where you see the marker. I'm not going to record. I'm going to do all that and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, here we have the front cover. Took some out there, got rid of that hump there. Don't need to do any of that from my calculations, and got rid of that whole piece. See, made it skinnier. That lines up with that part. I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so there we have it. We don't need to worry about in there too much because where the belt rides high, it's more where the case is, but as it's riding up, it would have just hit that edge. So that should be good. So we're gonna put everything on, start it up, and see how that belt fits in there. Okay, so the long belt works. I don't see any issues. It seems to fit. We're gonna put on the shorter belt now and try that because I noticed really high over here, and maybe because of the longness it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. I'm not too sure. I actually checked in my last when it was just running how far this opens. We're gonna put on the other belt and we're gonna see if this opens more. If it does open more, then that would mean that the shorter belt is better for top speed and the longer belt is better for acceleration, but it's a very small difference really. I might even end up running the shorter one. I still haven't decided. We're gonna decide on all of that. So this belt sits a little bit lower. It does. I mean, maybe even quite a bit. But I guess when you're going full speed, it does go further down just a little bit. But so I would say this one, and in the front it comes up the same. It goes right to the end. So I'm gonna say for sure, shorter belt better for top end, Longer belt, better for acceleration, but I mean, you could run the shorter belt and then change your gears in there, one down. You know what I mean? So I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess in my case, since I got the room, I'm gonna run the longer belt. If anything ever happens to it, then I'll run the shorter belt. Okay, now we're gonna take all this apart again and we're gonna work on the rear case. The front case is perfect. I put it on, I looked inside, it's clearing everywhere. Everything's good. The starter works, so that's good. So I'll tell you right now inside of here, so that first hump's gonna have to get cut off, and that one there too, just the first one. We'll do that for now, not the second one, because by the time that opens up, the belt goes down into it, so the belt's not gonna move over or anything. So we'll grind those off only as far as this hump, so we don't have to go any further than that, because in there we're good, and see the bolts touching there, but I think the gaskets will help with that. It even made a little hole there, but we could always JB weld that or just not really worry about that. The bottom's pretty much good, so I'm gonna put that on and show you how it looks. So if I was running the smaller belt, I would not even have to worry about it anymore, but see, there's just minor hump there I'm gonna cut down, and the bottom's pretty much good. It just maybe right there, and that should do it. And I'll be able to use this cover, and I am gonna space it too. It's gonna be, you know, like that far away, so it can clear. This nut here, once it's on, it hits right there. Okay, I'm gonna grind that down, and if it looks good, we're gonna start on the gaskets. Got one little hole there, but no big deal. Like I said, I could always JB weld it if I was worried about it. Okay, let's put it on, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, that's good there, and it's good there, so let's make some gaskets. The old stuff on again, with the rollers, everything's set up the way it's supposed to be, and we're gonna measure this end of this nut, this end of this bolt, always stays the same, and we're gonna see how much forward this part moves up with the new setup. So we're gonna measure that. Okay, so there we have it, 12.5. So we need to write that down. Okay, so now we got the new setup, the new, this thing, Variator, the 36 millimeter boss on. That's the way it's gonna run. Okay, and there's our measurement for that. So let's write that down. Okay, so for the front cover, we have to add 1.75, but we gotta have this gasket on, the original one, and then add 1.75. So I noticed that, so those two make 1.75, but if I take all three and put them together, they make roughly that. Well, so instead of having 3 gaskets, where it's the same as the 3 basically, so I'm gonna cut the front one out of that. Okay, so we got it roughly cut out. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some black spray paint. We're gonna paint this, and quickly before the paint dries, we're gonna press it onto that so we can see where we need to cut it on the inside. Well, that worked very, very well, as you can see. Yeah, now I can easily cut it out. Okay, so I cleaned it with some sandpaper and I cleaned this too with the Scotch-Brite. So now we're gonna crazy glue this right to this case. And once it's all dry, you can take a utility knife and even touch it up if you need to, but in our case, we're not gonna need to. Okay, I'm gonna let that glue dry and I'll show you what to do with the rear cover. So the rear cover comes with a rubber gasket, and obviously you can't use this gasket anymore because it will touch the big belt. There's the original gasket. Obviously that's not gonna work. So we're gonna get rid of that, and we just need to figure out how much to shim this out. So I can tell you already, even with that gasket on there, when you spin the clutch here, see these things here are hitting in here. I might even grind these off actually, but I'm just gonna try shimming it for now. So I'm gonna take the thickness of this gasket and I don't know, I'll play around and I'll let you know. Okay, so what I decided I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the exact same stuff that I used on this, but I'm just gonna make two gaskets and put them on top of each other. I got enough here, I can cut one out, and if I do it there, and then I should have enough to cut another one out of this one piece, and then I'll glue all two together, cut out the holes. You get the idea. All right, let's do that and see how that looks. Okay, here is the final install, and we're gonna drive it and see how it all works. So we're gonna put 9 grams, 7 grams, 9 grams, 7 grams, 9 grams, 7 grams. You are allowed to mix, but they have to match. You can't have like 9, 9, 9, and then 7, 7, because then it won't be balanced. It goes like that. Then you put that on like that. Then the boss with the compensating washers has to equal between 35.7 and 36. Here's the belt we're putting on, the longer one. I did tighten this. I brought it to a friend's house, put this in a vise, and I tightened it since I don't have the proper tool. Now we're gonna put this on, which we shimmed out. Basically 2.22, 2.35. In between there should work. I mean, that's pretty precise measurements for a cover, but anywhere between there works for this kit. Okay, so I drove the scooter around, all set up the way it is. So in the end, I ended up changing up the rollers. I ended up going with 3 9-gram rollers and 3 8-gram rollers. When I did it the other way, it was just a little bit too revvy for me. I like to go into town and cruise around in that. Basically, the heavier the rollers, it kind of revs it down and makes it shift faster. It still shifts perfect, like it stays in the low gear for a long time and then it starts to shift. I might even go a little bit heavier and just put 6-9 gram rollers, but for now I'm going to stay with that. And also I played around with the belts and there's barely no difference, but I'm going to say with the shorter belt it does seem to rev down more when you're going at a high speed, which is better for fuel economy, and you're not just sitting there, "Wah!" You know what I mean? You're actually lowering the revs when you're actually traveling around going, 60 kilometers per hour, 100 kilometers per hour. Overall, it's a great kit. I got it from Scooter Tuning. Came to like 400 Canadian dollars around there, 300 American, something like that. But now you can kind of play around and get whatever. But it's a good deal. It's basically as cheap as getting all the parts separately. Anyways, make sure you subscribe so I can keep making these videos. Let me know in the comments what you think. Too long, too short, I don't know. If you have any questions, feel free.